سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة ورضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب. محسن قد أتاك المسيء أنت المحسن وأنا المسيء، فتجاوز عن قبيح ما عندنا بجميل ما عندك يا كريم. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I'm just going to sit here and you call me.
Let's recite Dua Imam Zamana all together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kulli waliyyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. Salawatuka alayhi wa ala abai. في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتئه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
per Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Brothers and sisters, if you can settle in. Before I invite Sheikh Mahdi to ascend the member for his speech tonight, just a reminder there are no upcoming programs for this weekend. During the weekend of October 15th, CFK is honored to host Sayyid Asad Jafri. He will be also putting a workshop on for that weekend. More details to follow on the WhatsApp group. At this time, I'd like to invite Sheikh Mahdi Rastani to the member to honor us with his speech for tonight with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I'll ask the brothers and sisters to please move as close to the member as possible with a loud salawat.
It's good. I'll figure that out. It's fine. You can move it for whatever. Just move it that way. Thank you. One more salawat, please. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the love of our beloved prophets and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. So inshallah, tonight we are commemorating the martyrdom of our beloved 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. We'll continue with the khutbah of Imam Ali, and then inshallah near the end I'll share a couple of words about the life of Imam Hassan al-Askari, and of course a little bit of masa'ib at the end as well as we commemorate his shahada. For those who remember, I think the last Thursday night session we had was, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago, something like that. But essentially where we ended our discussion was these characteristics. وَيُعْتِي مَنْ حَرَمَهُ. The Imam said, the person who has taqwa, the one who is righteous, he has high level of faith and iman in his heart, يُعْتِي مَنْ حَرَمَهُ. He gives and he grants to those who deprived him. So this is the type of person who, when others don't do certain things for him, that doesn't push him necessarily out of animosity, out of a grudge that he's holding, out of those emotions that start to build inside of us, to sit there and say, well, you didn't do it for me, so I'm not going to do it for you. There's a lot of times in life, a friend, a relative is supposed to help you. And this friend or relative doesn't end up helping you. And then before you know it, lo and behold, 2 months down the road, 2 years down the road, 10 years down the road, that person is in the same exact position you used to be in. So then the question is, are those emotions going to get the best of you and you're going to sit there and say, well, you didn't do it for me, so I'm not going to do it for you, even though you can? Technically, is it haram to do this? No, in most scenarios, it's not haram to do this. Someone didn't do a favor for you. You don't want to do a favor for them. It's not haram per se. But the Imam is talking about the muttaqeen. He's saying the special servants of God, they're the type that when someone asks them for a favor, even though that person didn't extend that favor to them, but they will not use that as an excuse to then say, I'm not going to do this for you. Of course, the narration is not talking about situations where someone is taking advantage of you. It's not what it's talking about. No, this person did this out of ignorance. Yeah? How many times does it happen in life? You're dealing with someone, this person is immature, emotional, whatever the case might be. When you needed their help, they said, no, go, I don't even want to talk to you. Now they come back, they're more mature, they're more settled in life. Now they're more, settled down into their role in life. Now they come to you for help. So you, as a special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are supposed to, this is what's encouraged, to then extend your hand to them, to then help them out. Yeah? And this is not an easy thing to do. It's a difficult thing to do because you really have to set aside your ego. Put yourself in a situation where you do something for this person even though he didn't do the same thing for you. It's difficult. Because here's the thing, this is the catch. When you do that thing for him, you can't go back and keep reminding him that there was a time I needed you, you didn't help me, but you see I helped you even though you didn't help me back in the day. You can't do this. This is what we call minnats. This is different from mannats, right? There's mannats. It's a good thing. This is minnats, which you remind someone over and over again of what you did for them. So, if you're going to do it, they deprived you, but you decide, no, I'm going to still do this favor for them. Now they need my help, I'm going to do it. You can do it. And Islam wants you to do it, and it's encouraged. But just know, you can't keep going back to them and reminding them over and over and over again. Hey, you remember that time you didn't help me, but I helped you, but did this, that did that? You can't do it. This is the caveat that comes with it, yes? As difficult as this is, you find it in the lives of the Ahlul Bayt. I think the best example of how the Imams, they did not allow their emotions get the best of them. If someone hurt them, and then they were now in a position of power, how did the Ahlul Bayt show that you set aside your emotions, you still do the right thing? I mean, these things we talk about, we think we understand how easy it is. It's not this easy. Very difficult. So what happened? We're here in the Battle of Siffin. This is the ultimate example of it, yes? The Battle of Siffin, Imam Ali came, Muawiyah had already taken over the water. He had already cut off the water from the tents of Imam Ali because he got to the area before Imam Ali got to that region, right? He had already cut off the water. So Imam Ali wrote to him and sent him messengers and said, listen, you can't do this. This is not a fair way of the battlefield taking place. He said, this is what I'm going to do. Amr ibn As was against this, by the way, because he said, if you cut off the water to them, this is going to get them very brave. You know, when you make someone desperate, what happens to them? They're willing to do anything now. He said, Muawiyah, don't do this. You're making them desperate. The followers of Ali are now going to have even more reason to go up against you, to fight against you. Don't do this. So he was against this. But Muawiyah insisted that he was going to do it. So Imam Ali came amongst his companions. He said, listen, these guys are going to keep you thirsty. Either you fight and you open up the pathway to the water, or you die thirsty. There's no other option. So we read in history, in a quick day, they were able to take over the water themselves. And now Imam Ali was in this position. وَيُعْتِي مَنْ حَرَمَهُ. And he gives to the one who deprived him before. So now he's in charge of the water. And what did he say? He said, we're going to allow them to come and take water. So he opened up the path to the water. And when his companions opposed him, opposing in the sense of, like, what are you doing? This is now, you have the upper hand, so you're supposed to take advantage of this. He said, listen, we haven't come here to fight over water. We came here to fight over bigger things. This water thing was not the reason why we came here. So that I hold on to this water and I don't allow this person to drink from this water. وَيُعْتِي مَنْ حَرَمَهُ. And we read this in history, we think it's easy. It's not easy, because when this person deprives you the first time, your emotions take a hit. It's difficult, especially if you expected something from this person. A friend, a relative, a child you raised, a child you put all of the effort of the world into getting them to where they are. Then you need their help, they deprive you of that help. This happens sometimes, yeah? But then 10 years later, they might come back to you. So are you going to allow your emotions to get the best of you and say, listen, you didn't come the first time, so don't come back now? Or are you going to say, well, you made a mistake that time, but it's okay. We can move on. This is difficult, yes? وَيُعْتِي مَنْ حَرَمَهُ وَيَصِلُ مَنْ قَطَعَهُ. And he continues to hold on to the relationship with the one who wants to cut off his family ties with him. This is one of those situations where if someone does not do that good deed for you, they deprive you of something, you still have to extend the favor when they come asking for it. When? When it comes to family ties. When it comes to relationships in the family, this person cut off. This person said, listen, I don't even want to see you. Can you then turn around and say, well, I don't want to see you either? This is one of those particular situations where Islam has not allowed you to do this. Yes? Typically, if someone doesn't want to do a favor for you, can you sit back and say, I'm not going to do the favor for you either? Technically, yes. There's a lot of situations, yes? But the situation where someone wants to cut off family ties, this is where there is minimal responsibility on your shoulders. Someone says, well, I don't want to be in touch with you. And then later on they come and they ask you, well, let's, amend things, yes? Where I apologize, let's put things together. Can you sit there and say, no, I don't want it? You don't have this right. Because you have a duty when it comes to your relatives. Why is it Islam has emphasized this issue of relatives so much? This is a good question. I don't even know the answer to this question, honestly. There's some wisdom, there's some hikmah, there's some philosophy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has when it comes to silatul rahim. What's the importance of this silatul rahim? That you do it, the narration says, your life goes sometimes from 3 years, it's added 30 years to it. Why? Because you said salam to this guy. Because you checked up on your aunt. Because you gave your uncle a call. Yes? I'm sure some of the younger people here can relate, yeah? When your parents call back home, and then they say, come say salam to, your aunt. Come say salam to your uncle. And you don't even know, you've probably never even met this aunt or uncle. But they're like, come say salam. You're like, but why? It's so difficult, yeah? But just that salam, it counts as what? As silatul rahim. So the narrations say, silatul rahim you do prolongs your life 30 years. Yes? Imam al-Sadiq, salawatullahi salamuhu alayhi, he was in a gathering, his companion was in front of him. His companion's name was Sudair. He said, Ya Sudair, you were supposed to already be dead. You weren't even supposed to be sitting here. The only reason why you're sitting here is because right before the moment of your death came, you went and visited your relative. You did salatul rahim. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala added to your life. Otherwise, there was a number of times you were supposed to be dead. Imagine the goosebumps you get. 6 imams looking at you like you're supposed to already be dead. You're only sitting here because Silatul Rahim, it prolongs your life. It increases your wealth. How does this work? I texted my uncle or called my uncle, whatever, yes, my cousin, whatever the case might have been. And somehow, some way in my business, I'm going to make more money. These are just correlations that we have no idea about, yeah? And if you put it in the hands of today's science and material perspective, they're going to say, listen, this is crazy. This is a myth. This is a legend. This makes no sense. Because you talk to this person, now your business is going to make more money. How does this even mean? We don't know. We can't even explain it. All we know is that there's some wisdom and philosophy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has about relatives. That listen, at the end of the day, you cannot cut off your ties fully. Can you manage your relationships with your relatives? Yes. Some relatives you should be spending more time with. Some relatives you should be spending less time with. Just because it's my cousin, so I have to spend... No, that's not what we believe in Islam. In Islam, a minimal amount of your relationship, you have to always keep with your relatives. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. How are you? Wonderful, alhamdulillah. Great. It's the most, the least amount, yeah, of the relationship. You have to keep this. Doesn't matter if this person is good, bad, practicing, non-practicing, Muslim, non-Muslim, doesn't matter. None of these things matter. But then some of your relatives, they're closer to your understanding. They have the same values as you. They're good influence on your children. They're good influence on yourself. These relatives, you're supposed to spend more time with them. Nonetheless, he says this person, وَيَصِلُ مَنْ قَطَعَهُ. This person, when people come to him who had cut off ties with him before, now when they come to him and they say, we want to continue our relationship, he says, yes, I have no problem with
continuing our relationship. وَيَصِلُ مَنْ قَطَعَهُ بَعِيدًا فُحْشُهُ. His profanity is far and few. When he speaks, the type of words that he uses, these are not offensive words that he uses. Okay, this is something we have in our culture, by the way. Typically in our cultures, you will find this idea. Sometimes the use of these offensive words used sometimes as just, joke. It's interesting. Ayatollah Sistani says, even sometimes when you joke, you're not hurting anyone, you're just joking with your friend, yes? Certain words you're not even allowed to use. It's haram for you to use certain words even as part of your jokes. Yeah? Let alone if you're looking someone in the eyes and like you're saying something offensive to them, yeah? You're not allowed to. In the life of the Prophet, you almost never come across a moment in his life where he ever used an offensive word. So when he used to get angry, you and I get angry, and then God help us, what happens in the house, right? They have to call the thing. Sometimes he would get angry. You know how people could tell he was angry? It wasn't by him shouting. It wasn't by him yelling. It wasn't by him, God forbid, and these are things that happen in our communities, throwing things. It wasn't, God forbid, God forbid, God forbid. I feel bad even saying this word, but God forbid, getting physical with their spouse. Yeah, these are real things. They happen in our own community. People have shared with me. The Prophet never did this. The Prophet, when he was really upset, like sometimes the narration says, one time he got really, really upset, and you could tell in his face turned red. You could tell in his face that he was extremely uncomfortable and frustrated with this situation. The narration says he walked back, his abba fell from his shoulders, he didn't pick it up. This is how he showed he was very upset with the situation. Compare that to how we show how we're upset with the situation, yes? God forbid, someone says something we don't like. Then, oh my God, God help us. بَعِيدًا فُحْشُهُ. You barely ever find for him using this offensive words. And this is what you find in the Quran too. The Quran, even when it's describing the most sensitive of topics, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, he has full adab when he is speaking. He doesn't discuss things in an explicit manner. He doesn't discuss things in too much of a frank manner. So when he wants to talk about Yusuf and Zulaykha and the whole story, what does he say? وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا. Yeah? She wanted to make a move, and he was going to make a move if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not shown him his burhan. Okay, make a move. What does that even mean? Like what? He was going to get up from his chair? Yeah, so he was going to get up from his chair. Like, the Quran is being very vague about this, while helping you understand what is meant, yes? But it's being very vague about this. This is why in the verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the waist of the human being. He refers to it as gha'it. Yes, gha'it. Okay, so gha'it, what does it mean? Gha'it was the name of the place where they would go. Yes, and use as the bathroom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word of the place to refer to the act. Why? Because Islam taught people this adab. This is what made the Prophet so beautiful, by the way, yes? This is why he says, Al-adabu zaynul mar. Adab, manners, is what beautifies the human being. One person comes, he opens his mouth, everything comes out of his mouth. By the way, this is becoming very normal in the society that we live in, yes? One person comes and he speaks with manners, and you're drawn to him. So, wow. The way he walks, the way he talks, yes, the way he explains things. The only situation where you get very frank and you get explicit and you explain exactly what is happening is when you need consultation and help from somebody. There's something you're dealing with, spouses, not spouses, family. You have a question, you have a fiqhi question, you're trying to figure out, what do I do in this situation? This is where you're not supposed to feel embarrassed at all. This is where you're supposed to be open about it. Yes? Sometimes people will go 6 months, a year, 10 years without asking a question. Why? Oh, because I felt embarrassed if I would ask this question and then this. This is not the place to be embarrassed. Say, this is how I feel. I was doing this and this happened. What does Islam say about this? Now if you look at the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, some of them you can't even put in front of someone who's a child. Why? Because they were very frank when it came to these issues. Yes? Because they were very open about the details of things. Why? Because they were full of manners, but they're like, listen, you have to understand how you have to do things. So you have a question about this issue, about that issue. Many of the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, if you and I read them in a public setting, I'm saying, no, this is not the right thing to do. Why? Because the Imam is explaining the details of some fiqhi aspect, some fiqhi ruling, and he gets as detailed as you possibly can get. As frank as you possibly can get. Yes? But other than that, ba'idan fuhshuhu. When they speak in such a way where offensive words never even make it into their language. Yes? The Quran, probably the only place where you can say the Quran is showing how upset Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with people. The most upset he becomes with people is when there are people who enter into hellfire, and then in hellfire, they call out, they say, oh Allah save us, oh Allah do this, oh Allah do that, and stop the punishment, all of this kind of stuff. And of course these are people who are lying because they had all of the opportunity in the world to come back before, they didn't. Now they're dealing with the punishment, say, oh Allah, we need your help, oh Allah, we love you, all this. So at the height of his anger, quote unquote, because God doesn't become angry, the height of that, what does he say? Does he use an offensive word in the Quran? He says, قَالَ اخْسَأُوا فِيهَا. Don't talk to me. This is the furthest Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gone in the Quran. Don't talk to me. قَالَ اخْسَأُوا فِيهَا وَلَا تُكَلِّمُونَ. Be quiet. Don't talk to me. This is how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gone. And then look at the way we speak with one another. Look at the way spouses speak with one another. Yeah? Children and parents, how they speak to one another. How often do they use words that later on they end up regretting? This is something that we have to learn from them. بَعِيدًا فُحْشُهُ. The last characteristic, لَيِّنًا قَوْلُهُ. And when he speaks, his speak is soft. His speech is soft. Yes? I've heard from many brothers and sisters that Sheikh Mahdi, when you speak, the voice is so soft. You know, they were trying to compliment me, but I don't know if this was a compliment. They said, oh, when you speak, the speech is so soft, it puts my kids to sleep. It puts me to sleep. Yeah. I had a couple people send me a message, right? From their kids. They said, oh, mashallah, Sheikh, thank you so much. Our child easily went to sleep. So I said, I don't know, this is a compliment, or you're trying to ruin my day, or what's happening? لَيِّنًا قَوْلُهُ. Their speech is soft. When they speak, they're not harsh with people. This is the last point I want to make, and it's a very important point. As part of having your speech being soft, a big part of it is knowing when to speak and what to say and what words to use. Because sometimes you can say something that's very true, but because you're saying it either with the wrong words or in the wrong way, it can come off extremely insensitive. Extremely insensitive. I'll give you an example. Imagine someone got COVID, yeah? God forbid, they're dealing with COVID, yeah? And you go up to them, you're like, by the way, you know, this is a fact, right? By the way, you know, the percentage of people who die from COVID actually very, very low compared to other things. And this guy can barely breathe, right? He's like, I can't breathe. And you're like, actually, you know, COVID is like the 10th reason for people. It's very insensitive. It might be true, right? It's very insensitive. You have to know when to talk, when to keep quiet, how to use your words, and most importantly, this is the point I wanted to make, the medium that you use, the tool that you use to get the point across. That tool and medium, at your last option should be texting. Last option. When you have no more access to this person, last option should be texting. The first option is to meet with this person one-on-one, especially when sensitive discussions, yes? One-on-one. You can't, you do a phone call. You can't do that, you do a voice message, whatever the case might be. You can't, the final option is you text. Yes? Message. This is becoming the #1 form of communication. And the amount of arguments that it leads to. the amount of problems that it creates, that I've seen myself that it's created. Yes? Why? Because when this person is texting, you can't tell what tone they're using. You can't tell they're happy, they're upset, they're asking like, why did you do this? Or they're asking, by the way, why did you do this? You don't know. You're just reading some text. You might think this person is very upset with you, and it turns out very happy with you. Might turn out that person is very upset with you. You thought they were happy with you the whole time. You don't know. This is a serious problem. You know, they say 80-90% of communication is nonverbal. What does that mean? That means 80-90% of communication is not even about the words that you chose. It's about your body language and how you were speaking and so on and so forth. Now, you take all of that away and then you say, well, I want to discuss something important with this brother. I'm going to tell him about this issue. No, you want to discuss something important? Go meet with him in person. Don't message this, message that. It's a recipe for disaster. I want to tell my friend she should be doing this instead of that. Okay, go meet with them in person. You can't do that? Call them. Don't put a message in a group chat with 50 people, and then this person thinks, oh, you were upset with me, and then you have to come back and say, no, I wasn't upset with you, but you said this word. When they use this word, this is typically what it means. I've seen all of this, by the way. No, just go talk with them in person. لَيِّنًا قَوْلُهُ means he has the wisdom to speak in such a way where his words don't come off as harsh. And this is why I want to go through this narration from the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He says, قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. When you speak to people, speak to them in a good manner. مُؤْمِنُهُمْ وَمُخَالِفُهُمْ. To the one who's on your side and to the one who is not on your side. أَمَّا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ فَيَبْسِطُ لَهُمْ وَجْهَهُ. He says, when you speak to someone who is a good person, essentially. Al-mu'minun, we're doing it in a rough way. He's a good person. You speak to him nicely. Your face is also a smile, so on and so forth, yeah? Because he's really a good person. So what you're showing him is really the love and affection that you have for him. Speak to him nicely. You have a smile on your face. وَأَمَّا الْمُخَالِفُونَ. When you come across someone who does not belong to your school of thought, does not belong to your religion, does not belong to all of this. So what are you supposed to do then? He says you're supposed to speak beautifully so that you can draw him to your faith. The one who already believes, he's already your brother or sister, whatever the case might be, wonderful. He's already Muslim, wonderful. You speak to him because you're brother and sister, yeah? The one who's not this Muslim, you speak to him in such a way so that he hears what you're saying, the way you're speaking to him. لِاجْتِذَابِهِمْ إِلَى الْإِيمَانِ. So that you can bring him closer to the faith. He hears the way you're speaking, and then when you're gone, he says, wow, did you see his manners? Did you see the way he did things? That's why the narration of the 6th Imam says some of our Shia do stuff. And then when people want to blame someone, they blame us. They say, هَذَا أَدَبُ جَعْفَرْ. This is the manners that Ja'far ibn Muhammad teaches them. The terrible manners they have, this is what their 6th Imam teaches them. And I've seen this, yes? I've seen once the sister on social media. She commented something against some Shia speaker, for example, right? The words that were used. Muslim. And by the way, she was wrong. But I don't know, go to hell. I hope you burn. So what's going on? Okay, she's in the wrong. You can tell her she's in the wrong. Why this? All of a sudden, the furthest extreme. If this person disagrees with you, you speak to them in such a way so that it brings them back to your faith. Not easy. But if you do this, then you're becoming a walking icon of the faith. Anywhere you go, people look at you, they're drawn to the faith. This is ibadat. This is ibadat. Just because you're in the gathering, people feel drawn to this faith. They're like, man, this guy's so influential. The way he speaks, the way he carries himself. When you talk to him, he takes a moment to think, and then this is how you draw people to the faith, yes? Not, oh, come do this, come do that. No, with your akhlaq, then you will be able to show people. One more narration from the 11th Imam. He says, إِنَّ مُدَارَاتَ أَعْدَاءِ اللَّهِ مِنْ أَفْضَلِ صَدَقَةِ الْمَرْءِ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. He says, even when you are speaking to tyrants, to the tyrant, He says, when you speak to him, you chose your tone wisely. What do we hear? No. Sometimes people will say this. They have a misunderstanding of what Imam is saying. Oh, you should be like Imam is saying. You should speak truth to the power of the... No. The 11th Imam is saying what? He says, when you speak to them with mudarat. Why? This guy's a tyrant. He doesn't care about you. You get him angry too much, what is he going to do? He's going to get rid of you. Imam Hassan al-Askari, this was his situation in life. From when he was a child, when they brought Imam Mahdi to the city of Samira, yes, Bani al-Abbas put this pressure. They brought him, when they brought Imam al-Hadi, the 10th Imam, Imam al-Hadi brought his child, Imam Hassan al-Askari, to Samira with him. That's how he ended up there. And throughout his life, you find most of his life he was in, under surveillance. Sometimes in the prison, sometimes out of the prison, again in the prison. It was an on and off type of situation, yes? But why is it that Imam Hassan al-Askari can even live enough to then have a child that is the 12th Imam? Why? Because he's wise with the words that he uses. Did he speak truth to power? Of course he spoke truth to power. But he did it wisely. This is when you're speaking to a tyrant. Imagine you're speaking to your spouse. Imagine you're speaking to your child. He spoke wisely. He said what? He said, if you speak wisely to the tyrant, while you're saying what you have to say, but wisely, it is the best of charities or sadaqahs that you are doing for yourself. Meaning what? This is a great way to protect yourself. So you speak truth to power, even when you're doing that, you do that wisely. You can go up there and say, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. Or you can go up there and shout and yell, and they'll kick you out in 2 minutes. You have to understand how you speak, yes? This was Imam Hassan al-Askari, who during his life, throughout the majority of his life, was stuck in these prisons of Samira. These prisons that many of us have never even seen. Dungeons that we have never even seen. We only hear of the ghurba and the loneliness of this Imam. And the ghurba and the loneliness of this Imam was because of what? Because the Imam was looking forward to that moment where that one person, that one child is born who can carry this message until the end of time. Sallallahu alayka, yabna Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka. Ya Imam al-Hassan al-Askari, let us take our hearts, brothers and sisters, to the city of Samira, to these dungeons, to these prisons, to even the house of Imam Hassan al-Askari. Many of you have had the opportunity to go and visit the house and the shrine, which used to be the house of the Imam. Many of you have had the opportunity to go and visit this family house that multiple Imams are buried in. This family house that is gharib until this day. You find there are those who want to bomb it. There are those who cannot stand the presence of the Imam. Let us take our hearts to the city of Samira, the final moments of the life of Imam Hassan al-Askari. When those moments came around, the narration says, the poison that Imam Hassan al-Askari had drunk and that was given to him was so severe on his body. During those final days, he could barely even get up to take care of his individual affairs. His personal affairs, he could no longer take care of. His personal affairs, the servant says, I had to go around in the house and I had to start to take care of them for him. The narration says, when the final day of the life of Imam Hassan came around, the servant says, I made a special drink for Imam al-Hassan. I brought this special drink to Imam al-Hassan so that he could drink it in the hopes that this would give him the energy, in the hopes that he would recover from this. He says, when I gave him the glass to drink this drink, he says when he held it in his hand could barely even carry the glass at this point. The poison was so powerful. The pain was so much on his body. He says when he held the cup, the glass, his hands started to shiver and his hands started to tremble. And Imam al-Hassan's body cannot even take this pain anymore. He says he immediately put it down because he knew those final moments had come. And he knew there was no longer time for him to stay in this world. The servant says, Imam al-Hassan turned towards me. He said, go, there is a very young child in the room beside this room. go and call him and tell him to come, because there are some things I want to tell him in these final moments. The servant says, I went to the room beside him. I saw the son of Imam Hassan al-Askari. I called him. He came inside. The narration says when Imam al-Hassan saw him, he started to cry. And he took the drink with the help of his son, this 5-year-old son of his. And the narration says when he drank the drink with the help of his son, when he put it down, the cup or the glass, he turned towards this young child. He said, my salam goes to the one who the whole world is waiting for his return to happen. My salam goes to the one who will bring peace and justice to this world. My salam goes to the one, to you, O Mahdi, the one who all of the prophets and all of the imams, their hope and their dreams lie in your hands. The one who will inherit the message of all of the prophets. Imagine as Imam al-Hassan is saying these final words and this young child in front of him. On one hand, he knows the mission he has in life. In the other hand, the pain that he sees in front of him. His own father can barely speak. His own father is taking in this poison because of the oppression of Bani al-Abbas. We tell Imam Hassan al-Askari, Ya Imam al-Hassan, at least in those moments, you had a moment to sit down with your son and speak to your son. At least in those moments, you had someone by your side. At least in those moments, your body was not laying down in the middle of the plains of Karbala. On the 10th of Muharram, there came a moment where Hussein looked to his left, he looked to his right, and he no longer found any one of his companions. He no longer found any one of his relatives. Even Ali al-Asghar had been martyred at this point. The narration says Hussein looked left, he looked right, and he knew that now with the ocean of the army that stood in front of him, it was only Abu al-Fadl Abbas, and it was only Hussein who was left to go to the battlefield. The narration says when this moment came, all of a sudden Abu al-Fadl Abbas started to make his way towards the tent of Imam al-Hussein. And the narration says in those moments Hussein saw him. فَبَكَى الْحُسَيْنُ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Hussein started to cry heavily on the 10th of Muharram, because Abu al-Fadl was the only one who remained for Hussein in those moments. The narration says when Abu al-Fadl came to the tent of Hussein, he started to cry and cried heavily, and he said, Abu al-Fadl, if you come to ask for permission to go, تَفَرَّقَ عَسْكَرِي, my whole army is going to fall apart. There's no one who's going to be left behind. There's no one to defend us anymore, Ya Abu Abbas. The narration says Abbas turned to Hussein. He said, my brother Hussein, do you know why I came to ask you for permission? Because the pain on my heart is too much for me to bear. I watched Ali al-Akbar go to the battlefield and come back in pieces. I watched Qasim ibn al-Hassan go to the battlefield and come back martyred. I watched Ali al-Asghar, what happened to him. There's no longer any more capacity in my heart to take this pain anymore. Hussein, my heart is full of pain. Give me permission to go. I can't witness these moments anymore. I can't witness this pain anymore. The narration says Hussein turned towards him. He said, if you're going to go and bring a little bit of water for these children. Don't you call them, don't you hear them calling out, Al-Atash, Al-Atash, we're thirsty, we're thirsty. The narration says Abu al-Fadl Abbas started to get on his horse. As he could hear the call of Al-Atash, Al-Atash, he started to make his way towards the river of Furat. In front of him, thousands of the army of Ubaidullah and Umar ibn Sa'ad. The narration says as he head towards this water of Furat, the army started to open up. It started to crack open a little bit. And Abu al-Fadl Abbas started to make his way until he sat in the river of Furat. And he filled up his mashk with a little bit of water. And then he started to make his way back. But only Abu al-Fadl Abbas did not know that they were going to cut off his way to the tents. فَقَطَعُوا عَلَيْهِ الطَّرِيقِ. They cut off the path to the tents from Abu al-Fadl Abbas. The narration says, as he was coming back, they attacked him from every corner. And one narration says they attacked and severed his right arm. And he continued and they severed his left arm. And as long as Abu al-Fadl Abbas had this mashk with him, he still had his hope in his own hands. He still had a reason to return back to the tents. The narration says, then from every corner the arrows started to come towards Abu al-Fadl Abbas. on his body, on his horse, on his army, on his armor, until that moment came where one of these arrows hit the mashk of Abu al-Fadl Abbas, and the water started to drip away from the mashk of Abbas, and with that, the tears from the eyes of Abu al-Fadl Abbas started to drip away. The narration says, the Maqatil say, فَتَحَيَّرَ الْعَبَّاسِ. In that moment, Abbas didn't even know what to do. Does he go back to the tents? What answer does he give to the children in the tents? Does he go back to get some water from the river of Furat? And in these moments, he is struck on the head, and he fell from the horse with no hands, with his face on the ground. And he called out, Ya akha, adrik akha. The narration says Hussein ran into the battlefield. He sat by the body of Abu al-Fadl Abbas. What did they say in those moments? What were the words that they shared with each other in those moments? What does a brother say to his brother in those moments? We don't know. We don't know exactly what they said. All we know is when Hussein returned back towards the tents, he had a hand on his back and he said, Al-an inkasara dhahri. Now my back is broken, wa qallat hilati. And I can't even take this pain anymore. The narration says he came back, he pulled the column to the tent of Abbas. And all of these women and children already knew, our uncle Abbas is never coming back. The moment of captivity has begun. The moment of Isara has begun. Maybe Zainab goes to the tent and embraces these women and children now a little bit more, because she knows the moment of captivity and pain and the moment of the masa'ib of Kufa and Sham have now begun. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He places us amongst those who have the tawfiq to be amongst the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the right of the likes of Abu al-Fadl Abbas, by the right of the likes of Zainab, of Ali al-Akbar, of Qasim, of the 6-month-old of Imam al-Hussein. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants the hajat and the requests of all of you and all of those who have asked for iltimas dua during these days and nights. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of those who are sick and ill, all of those who are in hospitals, at home, in their beds, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala liberates them from their difficulty and their pain, inshaAllah. And finally, last but not least, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He hastens the return of our beloved 12th Imam. بالنبي وآله رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعجل فرج. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Inshallah, we'll move on to the recitation of Dua al-Kumail. Is it on the screen? On the screen? Let's start, inshallah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. Everyone. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك، وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك، وغلب قهرك، وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت وتجرأت بجهلي، وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي، كم من قبيح سترت، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت، وكم من عثار وقيت، وكم من مكروه دفعت، وكم من ثناء جميل جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عدم بلائي وأفرط به سوء حالي وقصرت به أعمالي وقعدت به أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربه من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شده وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلده ودقة عظمه يا من بدأ خلقه وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتقضيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة، وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارحها سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآمنين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أتباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أتباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقتع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيته يا عليما بضره ومسكنته يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقته يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملكه إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأسه ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم السلام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد زيادة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.